Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of the Restore Justice podcast. We're here with Bruce and our friend Marianne, who Bruce will introduce you to in just a moment. Bruce, set this part of the story up for us. Today we're going to look at the story through the lens of the priest. Marianne's going to share some of her thoughts as well, so it'd be great if you could introduce her as well. But set this up for us before we go to Marianne.
Sure. Well, Marianne is a longtime friend. We actually met over LinkedIn. She's led some amazing groups. She has a great heart for the underprivileged and is blessed to have her serve on the board of Administer Justice. And she's worked with different churches in different parts of the country, including one right now in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Certainly works with low-income populations, and so she has wonderful insights to share with us, I know. I think part of the problem is, even in America in particular, that's why the priest is a perfect topic to talk with Marianne about. It is that we just don't see the needs right around us. I mean, the poor are near us, especially when it comes to legal. 1 in 3 Americans can't afford a lawyer. That's a lot of people. And there are a lot of needs right around us. And I think sometimes we just get in bubbles. And I think that was the priest. You know, he would spend 2 weeks out of the year, twice a year, so 4 weeks total, but in these 2-week rotations, that he would travel to Jerusalem to do his service, good service, and then he's going back to Jericho, right? And I think he was just busy. He's just thinking about the good work he just did, good things going on in his life, and is looking forward to being home after being away. If you've ever been on a business trip, looking forward to that, getting home. And I think he saw, because the Bible tells us he saw the man, but I don't think he really saw him. I think he was in his own world, busy doing his own things, even good things, and he missed an opportunity to serve. And I think that happens a lot in our world today. I think we don't understand the needs of the poor and vulnerable around us, and we don't take the opportunity to serve, which is right before us, right in our own community. You don't have to go halfway around the world. It is right in your neighborhood.
Marianne, did you find that to be true? Like you spent time in the big company environment, right, before you stepped into nonprofit ministry leadership. But like, when you were in a big company, did you find that it was, again, we're so busy and what Bruce says kind of holds true? And then how did you break out of that? How did you step away from that mindset?
I think it's a combination, and Bruce and I have talked about this. I think it's a combination of busyness and fear. I think a lot of times there's a fear of stepping into what we don't know. And people that are not coming out of a poverty situation are afraid. It's not something they know. So they're busy. There's some fear. What's going to happen if I step into this space? The priest, maybe that was a setup, right? There were robbers on that road. Jesus tells us that. So could this not really be someone injured? Could it just be somebody wanting to now rob the priest? And then what happens to the temple and his family and everything?
Or to your point, Marianne, he could also have been thinking, I'm not a surgeon. I'm not that,
Yes,
like
exactly. So what can I do? And I think a lot of times that combination of busyness and fear is, what can I do? And what I have found in gospel justice centers and in the place that I am now, most people just want someone to listen to them. Yes, the gospel justice centers provide that legal assistance from the attorney, but they need someone before that will just listen, not judge, not tell them their own story, just listen and let them calm their fears. And that any of us can do. You don't need special training to just listen and pray. As Christians, we should all praying should be the easiest thing we do, right? So just pray with these individuals and let them know that there's a God that loves them. And that's why we do the gospel justice centers. It's what we are called to do as followers of Jesus. And what Bruce stepped out in faith all those years ago and did.
Bruce, one of the things, kind of the theme we're on right now is how busy we are, right? And in this case, like Marianne sharing, are we really that busy though? Like, in other words, does the data support that we are that busy, or is it just we're unfocused on it?
Right? It's a real feeling. I really believe that when people say that they feel that. But if we were to actually measure our time, it's kind of fun. Every year, the government, for whatever reason, just to waste our money, does an American Time Use survey, right? But they really do survey the usage of your time. And honestly, Joe, average American wastes 5.2 hours a day watching TV, watching movies, scrolling Facebook or different things on their phone. That's a lot of time.
Right.
And we feel, because frankly, sometimes we can get sucked into. Sometimes it can be something we're watching on TV, especially if it's news. We can get sucked into that. We feel a little overwhelmed, or even scrolling. We can get into suddenly a conversation and a fight, and it just feels overwhelmed. So we feel stretched and busy. But just like that priest, we're really missing an opportunity to do true life. What Marianne's saying, just sitting with not big agendas, just sitting beside somebody, listening to their story, providing them a cup of coffee, providing them some good direction and counsel, and praying with them. What even in just a short period of time, these are usually 45-minute appointments that we hold, but there are short periods of time. You'd be so much better spending some time with a friend at a coffee house, listening to them, leaning into their story and encouraging them, than you would scrolling or watching TV or binging Netflix or whatever it is that at least the American Time Use survey says too many of us do. And I encourage people to volunteer, get outside of themselves, spend some time with somebody who needs help, and you really will come alive, and you'll suddenly feel less busy.
Yes.
That's so true. And then there's also a way, in some cases, to intersect that world with your work. Marianne, I remember when I first met you, your job, were you a VP of operations or were you a plant manager?
Yeah, VP
but
of ops.
you chose a path to bring like your ministry calling into your work. Give us catch our viewers and listeners up on what you did, because that's an interesting way to intersect even a very busy career with huge impact.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as I've told Bruce over the years, God just picked me up and dropped me in that factory. And I had planned on staying 1 year, and do training and education. And then the owner handed human resources over to me, and then he turned over all of operations. So we had about 1,200 employees. I had 4 buildings I ran. But when I took over human resources, the Lord dropped an individual in my lap who was coming to us and was in work release. And we're going back over 30 years. I didn't even know what work release was, right? And here's this young kid who walked 5 miles in the snow for a job. And when I found out, I just heard the Lord's voice say, follow this path. And so we became the #1 ex-offender friendly organization in the entire state of Illinois. We hired people coming out of Statesville Prison. Homeless shelters sent us people. Rehab centers sent us people. Moody sent us people who had been trafficked. We ended up with people who literally lived on Lower Wacker Drive and came to work every day with everything they owned in a bag. And I saw it as a mission field, because those are God's children as well. And He didn't send any of them to earth to spend their lives living on a park bench in Chicago or Fort Wayne, Indiana. He sent them for a purpose. But you can't talk to anybody about Jesus if they're dirty, if they're not thriving. If they feel like they've been thrown away and you want to tell them about Jesus, they're going to say, I don't want to hear about Jesus. I slept on a park bench. But if you can get them a purpose and a sense of self-worth, and that somebody cares about them, even if it's the lady that runs the plant, then they'll listen to you when you say, let me tell you about my Jesus. But you got to get them to that point. And so that's what we did. So we employed them, and company grew 10 times with that workforce. And it was a mission field. And I could have very easily said, yeah, I only do Jesus at church. I only do Jesus when I volunteer. It would have been really easy, right? I didn't. I said, I do Jesus everywhere. And that included my workplace, working for someone who wasn't a Jesus person, not a Christian, not a believer. And it was tough. A lot of times, as Bruce knows, it wasn't easy. And I still did what I knew I was being called to do.
Yeah. So you were told to stop and do your part. And obviously your part was massive based on the outcomes you've had. But Bruce, isn't that so similar, though, in one sense, what Marianne was doing as a plant leader? Isn't that very similar to what a lawyer volunteer or some of these church volunteers do every Saturday morning once a month by doing the same one person at a time. They may not be doing it on hundreds of people at a time like Marianne did. Any thoughts from you on that? Some closing thoughts or feedback on that happening in your world?
Yeah, I can understand why I appreciate Marianne, because it is relationships, right? So just like that priest missed an opportunity to have a relationship with his injured neighbor. And lawyers, we get really busy. That profession is famous for being busy, and they can miss an opportunity to really enter into relationships. Sometimes those relationships can be short. Jesus had short relationships, a woman at a well over a 45-minute, hour-long conversation, or others. But when you demonstrate true compassion, concern, care, listening, and it's authentic and it's real. It's not, hey, I want you to listen to this so I can sell you Jesus. No, it's, I really care about you because you're a child of God made in his image, and he does have plans for you, and it's not sleeping on that bench. And so when they see that, and they see that on Saturdays. I saw that at Marianne's plan. I got to walk the floor with her, and all these people just loved Marianne because they knew that she was real. They knew that she really cared. It's the same thing even in a short time. People can see that in our volunteers. So, Joe, here's one recently, because I love the quotes that we get every single week from across the country. And I like to share them. But this one lady said, I felt at ease talking to the attorney and her assistant. They listened to me and provided me with great feedback. They both prayed with me, and I felt so cared about. I actually smiled a real smile for the first time in months. Thank you to Miss Shannon and Miss Nancy for listening and praying with me. That's powerful.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Marianne, any closing thoughts from you? Any encouragement you would have to someone listening? Maybe they're a lawyer. Maybe they're just a churchgoer who's thinking about volunteering. Maybe it's a pastor who's thinking, I need to open this at my church, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think going along with what we've talked about is the fact that, you don't need any special skills to listen. And so I have a bunch of high school kids that love to volunteer with me. And one of them, 16 years old, and he was pulling food in the food pantry. And a young woman came down to get food, and she was a couple years older than him, horrible life, been addicted, right? Foster child, all kinds of horrible things. And he looked at her, and he heard the Lord say, pray for her. And he stepped out and he said, can I pray for you? And he prayed for her. And she started crying, and she accepted Jesus. And she said, my whole life, I thought God was an angry old man who hated me. And that prayer changed my life about who God is and who Jesus is. So you don't need special skills. You just need the heart and the willingness to follow the Lord into a gospel justice center and listen to someone, and we can all do that.
That's right.
Amen.
Well, thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Bruce. Looking forward to our next time together. Everyone, thanks for listening in, and make it a great day.